So my project was to come up with something that is going to aid in like the overall culture support of our scholars. And so the one goal that I wanted to focus on was regarding attendance, and you know, we have like huge attendance problems, not attendance problems so much, but not truancy, when they're late. Tardiness.
For scholars, I'm assuming, right?
Tardiness for scholars, yes. And so I came up with this idea of the commitment renewal meeting to reinforce to parents that like it's important to be on time every day, but here's why. Not just like we need your kid here so we can start our day, more like to give them actual context about why it's important for their scholar to be here, but also on time and prepared every day. So basically my goal for that would be that we would see 100% of our kids here. Obviously we want 100% of our kids here between 7:30 and 8 a.m. every day, and that they're prepared to start their day on time, and just like their parents, and they're set up to be successful during the day. So I came up with this idea of a commitment renewal meeting because I think a lot of times for our parents, they're either not aware how important it is to be here. They think, oh, primary school, like, it's not a big deal. They can be late. Yeah, especially in kindergarten. And that's actually where we see a lot of our tardies, is in kindergarten. So they either think it's not really a big deal, or they're just not really aware that they are late or that it's consistent. And we know that for us, it's the ones that are late every single day, or they are consistently late. It's the same families over and over. And so like Jessica in the office has done a really great job of following up with those parents and saying, like, you're late again, you know, eventually we can file truancy if they're absent, but there's not really a whole lot of accountability about people being late. And with Uplift, like, we've had a really hard time finding, like, what is the consequence for parents.
Yeah, it certainly used to be a lot easier because you used to be able to count like every 3 tardies was an excused absence, but since that's not there.
It's not there anymore, and like, so there's no accountability. So essentially what this commitment renewal meeting is the idea behind it is that when a scholar reaches 3 tardies, and they can also work for other things like 3 unexcused attendances, 3 late pickups, 3 dress code violations, so it really could work for anything, but I've really framed it in the context of these tardies. So I made an agenda, and I wanted to walk you through it today, and then you can give me feedback on it, because I'm not sure if I'm like maybe missing anything that could be important in this. So the purpose of the meeting is to review the policies and the expectations that parents, I'm doing a video right now for that.
Heading out. I'm just
okay.
passing through.
Bye.
Quick ops, happy hour for a soda.
Oh, okay. So it's to review the policies and expectations for parents because we all know, here's the commitment that they signed in the beginning of the year, right?
Yep.
It's like, we believe that every scholar does this. We believe that the parents need to do this, and we believe that the school will do this. And then we agree to, and then everybody signs it. So the point of the meeting, the commitment renewal meeting, is to go through this document again, but literally line by line, to remind them of the commitments they've already made and the commitments that they need to renew going forward. So the first thing that we would do in a meeting, the meeting would consist of a member of admin, so dean, director, or operations director, and then the parent, and if necessary, the scholar. So if it's like a dress code issue, the scholar would be involved in that. So the first thing is to just review the purpose, and I put the purpose up here so it could literally be read. Then the second thing would be to ask the there's that one.
I'm sorry, it's just that there's a white Jeep and the lights are on it. I didn't know if it was y'all's or no.
Sorry.
I think it.
Typical school meeting. So the second thing would be to ask the parent, like, what are your goals for your scholar? Like, what do you,
Yeah, that's great.
where do you see your scholar going, or like, what do you want for them? And then it would be the chance for us to say, well, we want your scholar to go to college. That's never been a question for us, and we're here to get them there, and we know it, as a team, it's very important. So the second thing that I thought it would be maybe really beneficial to do would be to calculate the time over the period of days that their scholar has missed out of class. So
Yeah.
if they're arriving 15 minutes late every single day, what that would amount to in the course of a year, how many days that would amount to, and then to just really tie it to this idea of, like, there's a study that I included in all of this that relates the, I think it's like the literacy gap, essentially, of hearing words, and
Yeah.
the more words you hear, the more prepared you are. And so we know a lot of like these important words are spoken during morning meeting, and if they're missing morning meeting every day, they're missing X amount of words, which puts them at a totally different level of literacy than their peers. So we could tie it to that. The other piece of that would be, if this part is more important to the parent, literally breaking down for them the funding that they are now holding the school back from getting, but more importantly, their scholar. So if they're missing a day of school, they're missing $47 that the school could be using to provide their scholar with resources.
Yeah.
So if it's that kind of a parent, and they feel like they relate better to money than they do to time, then you're finding what's important to them and hitting that too. And then I know going forward, y'all are really thinking about using that IB report card, and I thought a really great way to actually, your grading period for that would be morning meeting.
Yeah.
So there's an added level of accountability. Like, if they're missing morning meeting, that's a grade, and they're so far getting a 0 for that. So y'all have your IB report card. They could really use morning meeting for that. Questions so far?
Is this a good time for feedback also?
Sure.
Okay, so I really like the idea of the funding missing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some of my hesitance bringing up funding sometimes is a parent thinking, you guys are only just worried about money, you're not worried about my kid being there. So I think that's awesome to make sure that you're like really explicitly tying this to concrete resources, that we know that because we have this X amount of dollars, because kids are mostly sharing one time, we are able to get that interventionist, which your child is saying. And so if like this continues, or if other people are continuing to follow the same pattern, then we could potentially lose that staff member and that support.
That's true. And I think maybe would you recommend like leaving this off of the actual agenda and like having it in the back pocket, sort of, when you go into that meeting?
I think it's good to list it, because I think that a lot of our parents are not, I think you need to be explicit in understanding how we have those really specific concrete ties to how that funding is used. And so I think that even if you know that the scholar loves music, and be like, the way that we are able to pay for Miss Manning's salary is by the scholar showing up. And so we cannot afford to have music, which I know your child loves, unless people are showing up and they're attending.
That's true. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. So then I also grappled with this idea of a support plan. So to me, this was a lot like our teacher performance improvement plans, like the PIPs, that we would put our teachers on. And I know that there's sort of no consequence or accountability that we can use with parents, but I think it would be cool to offer that support and say, like, as a school, how can we help you? And would it be beneficial for you to be on a plan? Like, can we set goals for you? Can you meet X amount of mornings in the next 3 weeks? And we'll see how that goes.
I think that would work best if it was goals for the child. I think if it's goals for you, it might come across a little bit
punitive.
Yeah, and I think if this doesn't have teeth, that's not going to have teeth, but I think if you tie it to their kid, I think that they're going to see that, especially if you tie a reward to their child if they meet that goal.
Ooh,
so, yeah. I really like this idea of, like, how can we help, like, trying to find out what that root cause is, like, with the one family that has the 4 boys, I was in the video.
Right.
We know a lot of it's just they're scrambling to get ready, and so we know that root cause is like working with some social skills on the 2nd and 3rd graders to make sure that they are, like, they have a routine, their backpacks are always in the same place.
Or how can we provide you breakfast so you don't have to do that at home? And Yeah.
That's a good idea. So hitting that, I think, is really gonna help them know that it's support, not just all this.
Yeah. And then one thing that a team member offered when I first talked through this was, what about offering the idea of having that parent help as a morning volunteer? Like, hey, would you be willing to be a morning volunteer starting at 7:15? That way your kid can come early and hang out for a while. And then if they're not, then mention like how we can help you. And then I don't want to get to this point in these meetings, but I do think it's really important that this meeting becomes a sort of a platform to restate that this is ultimately a school of choice, and you've signed this commitment and we've gone through it again, and that we have X amount of kids. I think ours is up to like, you just sent out a thing, like 488 kids on the wait list.
Oh yeah, I think that's just
for kindergarten, right? So if it's a kindergarten scholar, look, there are 488 other scholars that want your child's spot desperately. And if you are not going to meet these commitments, there are 488 families that will.
Yeah.
And I think being really, just like really firm about it, I don't see.
Yeah, I think that's great. Because then I think it helps them, I mean, like, you want to raise the prestige. Like, we want to help them realize they're in a prestigious place, and when you're somewhere where you feel like you're in a privileged opportunity, then you're going to go a little bit extra to make sure that you continue to have that opportunity, I think. I think something that I didn't think up here for the support plan is, I think just make sure reiterating what time you do open, because sometimes they don't realize that they can drop them off earlier. And so if they're trying to figure out like rush hour or whatever that looks like, maybe it's car line, well, you can come earlier so you don't have to worry about car line. And then I only would have thought about this because of Cheyenne, but if you have a few local areas that do morning care, that will do bus drop off. And then knowing that if finances is an issue, then I know that there's something where, like, if you qualify for Medicaid, if both parents work, or if you're a single mom that's working, then you can qualify for, it's like assistance, but it's specifically for childcare.
Oh, cool.
So like they will pay some or all of childcare if your income qualifies. And so wondering if it might be helpful just to call around and get 3 or 4 brochures, and then a brochure for the, I think it's called CCMS, I think is what it's called, for the childcare assistance.
Oh, cool. So like options for support that way.
And like, I probably wouldn't put it on here, but just another upgrade might be, since I think Pinnacle's right off that bus route, just getting a few of those like times, if the transportation, if they're having to rely on somebody else. So now that's probably more middle school, high school where they'd be more independent with that.
So then this last part would be going through this compact that we have. And going through bullet by bullet and saying, like, if this is the one you're not meeting right now, like, I will arrive at school every day by 7:55 in order to guarantee a full instructional day. You're not meeting that, how can we help you meet that? And just reiterating it again. And then taking the time to re-sign the commitment and re-sign this.
At any point would you, like, I hear you saying a lot of, like, what can we do? Do you plan on using any language that says, like, what are you planning to do in order to meet this moving forward? That's
a really good point, and that actually made me think right here that maybe there needs to be part of this agenda is not just signing it, but there needs to be like school action. And then like a line, and then parent commitment or parent action. Like, exactly like what we'd go through with our teachers and after we observe them or something. Like, what is the school going to do? What is the parent going to do? And then we sign it.
And I've also found some success making sure that we go through the school's commitment. And I know you guys are going through this line by line, but making it a safe place to say, you know, we're holding you accountable to this. Is there anything here that you feel like we haven't? Because chances are it's either going to be maybe one thing that, like, okay, definitely thank you for that, we'll fix it. But I'm sure most of it is always going to be, oh, you guys are doing everything. So then it's much more clear that they're the ones that are meeting their end of the bargain.
Cool. So what do you think overall?
I think this is awesome because I know that this is awesome to have this document, but I know uplift-wide, having conversations around it are tricky. And then if we go to the school of choice piece, it's a lot easier to show, like, you're committing to this, you're still not following through. Is this a place that you really want your child to be? Because we're going to keep having these meetings every couple of weeks. I can see the one maybe piece of pushback we would get from, I think, leadership, like network-wide, is like, this is a huge time commitment for leaders. This is like a solid 15-30 minutes
for one, and if you have scholars that are continually late, but I really think that this is one of those situations where, like, if you put in the time in the beginning,
Yeah.
it becomes less of an issue throughout the year.
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, especially if the scholars start attending, like, you know, middle
Yeah.
elementary school up,
Mhm.
is really communicating a sense of, like, no kid really left behind. And
Mhm.
so I think that could be a huge trust builder. Two, the ones I know that we struggle the most with, tons of absences and tardiness, are the ones that we either have a ton of our behavior issues with
Yeah.
or our academic issues with. And so I really think that, like, this kind of stuff is the root of why we have a lot of the academic or behavior stuff.
I agree. Cool.
So, like, to your point, I think it's investment. Like, yeah, they would push back, but I think if we could say, if you could eliminate that tardiness issue, how much better would their academics and behavior improve, which would save you time in the long run.
Yeah.
And build trust with your staff too.
Yeah.
Because then, yeah, that's a good point, because even the staff culture piece, like, I know when I was a teacher, it was like, this is a school of choice, like,
Yeah.
do something about this
Right.
parent that's not meeting it, and so I think this
So
helps us have
frustrating
a
for the
protocol
teacher.
on what
Yeah.
to do, yeah.
Awesome. And I think one other thing I had thought about too is, like, if the teacher can be involved in this meeting, great. But in part of this plan addresses the fact that I really think these are conversations that need to start at a teacher level. It shouldn't have to wait until that scholar is late 3 times.
Yeah.
It should be the first time they're late, that teacher knows and has been trained to call home and say,
Yeah.
like, they were late today, I really need them there on time.
Yeah.
So it starts with the teacher, but when it gets to this point, we have a plan in place.
And I think that maybe down the line, we can figure out what that intermediate step is. Maybe at 2 tardies, we have some kind of form slip. We keep
Yeah.
a stack in the lounge, and they can just put their name. Like, we notice that your child has been absent, or
Yeah. A
excuse
letter.
absence 2 times or whatever. And then that way, we've already done the language for them. It's already translated.
Yeah.
And that way, they're aware that we're keeping track.
That's a good idea. All right, cool. Well,
Cool.
thank you for meeting with me today.
Oh, good idea.
Right.
By the way, apparently operations is at happy hour, and there's a white Jeep that has the lights on outside.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Typical school meeting. People popping in unannounced. Say hi to Dr. Black.